Andy and you're watching Guitar Guru channel. What are we gonna talk about today? Well, this is my first ever PRS guitar. I've been always playing Fenders for decades. Then relatively recently I switched in some use cases to Gibson Les Pauls. I got two awesome custom shop Gibson Les Paul guitars in my collection. And very recently I just started paying attention to the third player in the game. You cannot really, compare PRS as a company to Gibson or Fender because it's way smaller. But I just decided to give it a try and see what is the fuzz about PRS guitars, especially if it's a core PRS guitar. Core means high-end, made in the United States series, right? So I got lucky to get core 2009 McCarty Korina. Korina is a type of wood in the body and the neck of this guitar, with the exception of Brazilian rosewood fretboard. Other than that, it's made of Korina, which is kind of similar to somewhere in between of ash and mahogany, but it's neither of them. It's very lightweight, so it makes the guitar very lightweight, so you almost don't feel it on your shoulder when you play. And it kind of, specifically ergonomics of McCarty, of this series, make you feel like you don't have an instrument. It's like you are playing through that guitar and this instrument is an extension of you. PRS McCarty Korina Vintage, and this is pretty much already a vintage instrument, right? In another 5 to 7 years it will become true vintage. That is why this particular model is going up in price by the year. So if you check right now, first of all, you will not find many of these particular guitars even on Reverb, which is probably the biggest platform where people sell guitars. So it's harder and harder to find because it was a limited run. It's a limited series. Only 500 of these guitars were produced, right? So it's gonna be very hard to find. But even now on Reverb, you can probably find a couple of them, and the price range is in between 3,000 or 3.5 to 4.5 right now. I'm pretty sure it will get to the point of 5 grand at least in 2024, somewhere in the second half. Because again, it's a very rare instrument and it's a limited run. From what I understand, the wood, Korina, lightweight wood, came from some region in Africa, and this wood was extremely rare and expensive. So they masked it with another label or something. So it was brought to United States almost like illegally, basically. But we got lucky, like guitarists, that Gibson and PRS grabbed a little portion of this wood to make very high-end guitars. Other than this awesome Korina lightweight body and neck, besides the wood, the guitar is very plain, very basic, ergonomics and all, humbuckers, and just two controls, with one of them being split coil, so you can go from dirtier to cleaner. You hear that? Which makes this guitar very easy to play. It kind of lays inside your frame, right? As I mentioned before, you almost don't feel the actual instrument, right? Like high-end Gibson Les Paul or Fender Stratocaster, they have very peculiar characteristics in the tone, and they sound like Fender or like Gibson, while PRS McCarty, at least this particular model, makes you feel like there is no instrument in your hands. It's like your soul is singing. All right, check this out. Open string with clean sound. Sounds like grand piano string. does PRS guitar stand? Is it closer to Gibson or Fender? Because a lot of guitar bloggers on YouTube, when they compare Gibson, Fender and PRS, they say that PRS can be a replacement for both Gibson Les Paul, let's say, and Fender Stratocaster, which is not entirely true, right? So the explanation is that it has humbuckers, right, and similar body to Gibson, so it can replicate Gibson tone. At the same time, it gets you glossier because of the wood, right, and apparently the fretboard wood. It gets you very similar glossy sound when you compare it to Fender Stratocaster. But after me playing this instrument for days, weeks, for hours and hours every day, I can tell it's not entirely true. So it's not a replacement, and it's not in between Gibson and Fender. It's a totally different animal. It stands separately. It has its own niche and use cases. While, let's say, Gibson Les Paul is unapologetically powerful, it gives you this raw power and dirty drive sound that actually penetrates anything in the mix. You can hear Whitesnake, John Sykes, for example, or Slash from Guns N' Roses. It's very powerful, even in the higher register, on the higher notes. It gives you a sense of unapologetic power. For these use cases. Or Fender Stratocaster, especially if it's a good guitar, gives you this breaking glass clean sound which cannot be replicated. Like, you can take any other guitar, PRS or Gibson, you will not get this kind of sound. Now, PRS guitar cannot really compete with Les Paul custom shop, even though it has these humbuckers that are, I believe, called McCarty treble, McCarty bass. If you have more information about that, please share in the comments for this video. So we want people to be able to, research better before they buy PRS guitar. So your contribution is appreciated. So it cannot compete with a Gibson Les Paul, right? These pickups are somewhat powerful, but they don't give you that raw power and punch that you get from Gibson Les Paul. Also, it cannot really compete with Fender Stratocaster clean, penetrating and transparent sound. Like in clean, that breaking glass, it comes a little bit closer to it than, let's say, Gibson Les Paul, right? But it cannot replace Stratocaster. That's simply not true. You need all these guitars for different cases, for different use cases. And PRS takes its own niche, which is specifically articulation. And it's very good when you play delicate phrasing. Delicate is probably the best word to describe PRS guitar when you play solo. So if you are into this tasteful solo phrasing, something similar to what Carlos Santana is doing, you can hear him playing solo or guitar riff. It's not super powerful. It's not a replacement for Fender Stratocaster or competing with Fender Stratocaster, but it has peculiar characteristics that let you be very, very precise when you play guitar riff, and it kind of penetrates the mix in the proper way, and it gives you this delicate phrasing and sound production when you play solo, something like that. it's all just about a use case and what kind of guitar player you are. If you are into precision and delicacy when you play solo, PRS guitar is for you. If you need powerful guitar riffs and shreds, something in the style of Zakk Wylde, then you go with Les Paul Custom. And if you need something very clean and transparent, but still being able to penetrate the mix, I'm talking about Fender Stratocaster. If you play something like classical hard rock, like Richard Blackmore, right? Or you play intellectual rock music, like Pink Floyd, there is nothing that can replace Fender Stratocaster in this case. So ideally, you would want to have all three of these guitars, right? And I've been avoiding PRS for a very long time because I trusted more in Gibson or Fender as a brand. And you can't blame anyone for that, right? Because from one source of statistics, I found out that Fender sells 2,000 guitars daily worldwide, while let's say Gibson, 1,000 guitars sells daily. And PRS, maybe 20. So you see how far they are from each other and how far PRS is in size, let's say, at scale, compared to big elephants who sell like high-end guitars. But still, right now, I think that number 3 in any measure is PRS. And it's getting its specific niche more and more by the year. Also, and that's important, if you are a musician who creates his own music, I think PRS has a little bit more advantage compared to Gibson or Fender, because Gibson and Fender are totally explored to the bone. Tons and tons of very big and famous musicians, guitarists played Gibson and Fender already. You like just name any famous guitarist and it will be either Fender Stratocaster or Gibson Les Paul or Gibson SG. So basically anyone. Stratocasters like Jimi Hendrix, Ritchie Blackmore, Yngwie Malmsteen, Steve Ray Vaughan, David Gilmour, etc. We talk Gibson guitars, it's everyone from Ozzy Osbourne guitarists to Guns N' Roses, or from AC/DC to Whitesnake, John Sykes. So you see these famous and big guitarists already explored Fender and Gibson to the last penny. Everything is already known. Everything that these guitars can do is already explored. While PRS, on the other hand, if I ask my friends, guitar enthusiasts, guitar players all over the world, when I ask them, can you name at least 2 or 3 big signature guitarists that play PRS, all they can say is Carlos Santana. That is it, right? Somebody else told me that John Mayer at some point played some kind of PRS guitar. But you cannot compare Jimi Hendrix's legacy, right, or Ritchie Blackmore to what John Mayer is doing. Although he's a good musician, I can't say anything bad about him, but you just can't compare the legacies, right, and the level. So PRS is relatively unexplored territory. So if you are trying to move music forward, if you want our contemporary music to be unstuck, then probably it would make more sense to play PRS guitar and explore it more and see what else it has to offer. You have a better chance to create modern contemporary rock music playing PRS guitar than anything else, because playing famous models from Gibson or Fender will ultimately make you sound like somebody else, like some other famous guitarist that used to play Fender or Gibson in the past. It's almost inevitable. And I strongly encourage you to check this particular model and try to get a hold of this particular guitar, because they are becoming very rare and very hard to find. Again, this is 2008 or 2009 PRS McCarty Korina vintage. Well, now I hope my video will help you make up your mind on purchasing a PRS guitar or anything else for that matter, right, to make your decision. And that would be all for today. I'll see you in the next video. That was me, Andy Paul, and Guitar Guru channel. Until next video, bye.